I was saying that's the best I've ever eaten. And then you email me and send me
I think the music's still on.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight to the closing social for the first ever Israeli Apartheid Week in Regina. It's great to see everybody here. We've had a great two and a half weeks of events with some excellent speakers, 2 great documentaries. So first of all, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming and thank especially the organizing committee, Regina Solidarity Group. Came together fairly quickly, and hopefully Israeli Apartheid Week will just be the first of many Israeli Apartheid Weeks, hopefully not too long, but and other things too we have planned.
Like 2 more. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're very lucky, privileged to have Remi Kanazi here tonight. As the bio says, he's a New York-based poet, writer, activist. He'll be reading from his book that you can buy at the back, Poetic Injustice. Informed me when he got off the plane he's not taking any home, so please buy a copy.
You can flip through it.
But he has been featured on numerous places like Al Jazeera English, GRITtv, BBC Radio. What else?
He hangs out with Loki.
Definitely does. I think to start off, I just want to read a quick quote, I think, to why having something like Remi here is just so important. And this is from Chris Hedges. It's through art, not the news, that we feel and begin to understand the long night of suffering of the Palestinians. And I think, Remi will I think, blow our minds here tonight with his words. And I just want everybody to keep in mind, too, this is about the struggle of the Palestinian people, but this is about the struggle of people that have been colonized all over the world, including in our own backyard. So we always need to keep that in mind. The fight of, the colonized against the colonizers. So without further ado, Remi Kanazi.
Mic check, I'm not actually going to use you. But I guess I will for a second while I'm talking on the mic, because I can talk real fast and nobody can understand me. I wanna thank you guys. Your name is not Regina, but I thought it was until some dude yelled at me in Toronto. He was like, "It's Regina," and I was like, "Whoa!" I didn't spit on Regina. I just said it wrong. Okay, off the bat, I was in a couple comedy festivals. I think I'm funny, but I'm not. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. I've been touring Canada, I guess, for the last week and a half. And if you asked me, I don't know, 3 months ago, or when I was in Palestine, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll see you next time in Regina," and I was like joking, and I was like, "Okay, 3 months later, I'm going to see you here." This is the last show of the Canada leg of my tour, and I don't know. I'm going to stop talking on this mic. Okay, no. Why is it good to be here? One of the nice things about touring is I've been touring for Israeli Apartheid Week, but I started the first week of March. We had Israeli Apartheid Week a little bit earlier. And why is Israeli Apartheid Week important? Because we kind of need to come out in our communities and stand up for the craziness that the Harper administration is throwing around. And as a Palestine activist, as somebody whose grandparents were dispossessed in 1948, and whether it's working in Native communities or migrant rights in the U.S. or against police brutality or the U.S.-Mexico border, if we don't step up, then nobody will. And I think what Egypt and Tunisia and the revolutions happening throughout the Middle East crystallized is that when people do come together, it seems like small incremental steps, but they can amass and form larger steps, in those cases revolutions, even though they're in the beginning phases of them. So I know this is your first Israeli Apartheid Week, but you guys have been doing really amazing work. I mean, you had Ali Benima, you had Haweda, and you've had this party, and a lot of people came out, and you have awesome food. So I'm just going to start off angry. I gotta do that. I grew up in Western Massachusetts. That was awkward. There was a lot of snow like it was here. It was like, I grew up in like a town of 9,000 people, and I was like the collective minority. We got like a Cambodian family in like the 7th grade, and like a Chinese family, and I was like, pick on them. They're like colored too, and it's like weird. I was like fat, and I had one eyebrow, and my mom spoke a lot of Arabic, and I was like, you're scaring away children in the neighborhood. So that was weird. That has nothing to do with this first poem. Okay, so I started off writing a lot of identity pieces because I moved to New York City 4 months before 9/11. That didn't go over well. I was living in the Bronx, and when those 2 towers came down, there was so much vitriolic language. And I was, you know, I grew up in Western Mass, and I wanted like Coca-Cola and McDonald's. I didn't want like tabbouleh and sfiha and nice hummus in the back. And so it wasn't until I got to college, my brother was starting to figure out what his Palestinian identity meant to him, and what our grandmother's stories meant to him. He kind of passed that along to me. And so when I was in New York, there was this enormous backlash. And like all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're Arab, what do you think? What are Palestinians thinking? And I was like, I don't know, let me go poll some people. So I started to read everything that I could, and a couple years after that, I started to write about Middle East politics. And I'm old now, I'm 29. I didn't become I do a lot of universities, people. They're like, yes you are, you can be my dad in Kentucky. So yeah, because they do that in Kentucky. Okay, so it wasn't until 2004, 2005 that I saw HBO Def Poetry Jam on Broadway. And I saw Suhair Hamad and all these other poets performing and talking about social justice and intersecting all of these other issues. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool, I want to go and do that. So I went home and I started writing. This first poem, we're not going to start you light. We're going to like throw you in. This is called Coexistence. It's the fall of unity is overrated. Now, I don't mean coexistence in like the happy sense where we're like chilling and getting our Pellegrino over by our hummus and baklava and some other stuff. I mean in like the BS CNN sense that if like the Palestinians come to the table, give up 90% of their homeland, stay in Bantustan's and ghetto, give up the right of return, then maybe Israel will have peace with them in 100 years. That's kind of bullshit. I want nothing to do with that. So I wrote this poem in response. I don't want to coexist. Not like good guys and bad guys and true lies and propaganda. Put on black faces, cab drivers, your deli owners in your racist comedies. Not bomb your Dunkin' Donuts with my kafia, fist pound Fox News, or let you steal my food and call it Israeli salad. I won't mess with the Zohan or let them turn the rocks of Palestinian children into balloon animals while Israeli soldiers snipe our children's heads, shoulders, knees, and stomachs. Hollywood sightseers of young ones with lovable tales of blue and white heroes. I'm not looking for your approval, not a token roll or job on my knees scrubbing toilets in Israel's Congress. I'd rather fight with blacks and Latinos against oppression than concede to a mainstream plantation that sees me as other unless I'm checking a college application. I don't believe in the tooth fairy or 2,000 claims of homes you supposedly deserved when people resurrected and walked on water. I'll exist in a world that fights against racism like Martin and Malcolm, bleeds ghetto tales of Stephen Biko as a song that never dies no matter what apartheid makes of our bodies, feeds mouths in Belfast streets, and resurrects Bobby Sands' message so that we'll never be hungry again. And whether you know it or not, I'm the best solution you have. One man asking for one vote, telling you to look at the sea, and I'll never drive you into it. I'll never return the favor. I'm not outstretching an olive branch and a rifle. I'm extending reality, because being surrounded by so-called enemies on your borders is easier than in your towns and election centers. We may not be brothers, but this neighborhood has made us cousins. I don't want to coexist. I want to exist as a human being. And justice will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Oddly, that was the love poem. Love poem for television. Delilah, do you guys have Delilah love songs after dark? No? Whatever. Maybe it's a US thing. That has nothing to do with the next poem. Oh, I'm going to do a poem called Home. Okay, so I talked about identity. I'm going to do an identity poem, and I think it's really important. I grew up in a small town in Western Massachusetts, and my dad was a doctor. And I've had an extremely privileged upbringing, and I think a lot of people have, especially in the world's richest nation, even though we don't like healthcare, education, because they're luxuries. Yeah, Canada, okay. But it's because of that, and seeing what my grandparents went through, and going back to Palestine, and seeing the struggle of the civil rights movement of South Africa, what was going on in the US-Mexico border. I just came back from the Borderlands conference. It was the first one in Arizona, and it was called Concrete Connections, and it was basically drawing a parallel of what was happening on the US-Mexico border and how Elbit Systems and Motorola are building the same technologies, and the same companies building the wall on the US-Mexico border and destroying families in the US are the same companies doing the same thing in Palestine. And so, or you know, how the Patriot Act and anti-immigration laws are used to, it's like, oh, we can use these ones to oppress Arabs, and these ones to oppress Latinos, and these ones to oppress undocumented people, and then they just use all of them against all the communities. But it's because of that, in that my country gives $3.1 billion in aid. So that's why, to me, IAW is so important, with Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions as the underpinning, because we can't expect a change if we don't act against the status quo. And the status quo in my country is giving $3.1 billion in aid a year to Israel. It's giving cluster bombs and hellfire missiles and white phosphorus and vetoes at the UN. And as important it is to write a book or write a poem, it's as important and more important to act. So traveling across the country and seeing the work that the activists have been doing at UWO, at Carleton, at Queen's College, throughout Ontario and Montreal, it's been really energizing, revitalizing, because the work that some of these 19 and 20-year-old students are doing are the work that 35 and 40-year-old activists are doing. And when I first started performing, everybody wanted to do a children's event. And for me, of course, I want to raise money for prosthetic limbs. I want to raise money for people that need aid, but the Palestinian people aren't victims. They have enough to sustain themselves. They can't, because they are occupied, because they are living under a system of apartheid, because 1,400 people are being slaughtered in 22 days, because settlers are dumping sewage on their land. So it is not a coincidence. It is not that they lack wheat, or they lack, you know, the basic means to survive. It's that there's a country that is refusing and not allowing them to survive. And because of our government and the support they are giving, that reality continues to happen. So this poem is called Home. I kind of talk a lot outside the poetry. I'll go back to being goofy in a minute. Remix. What? Oh, was it here? No, it's okay. We allow that. Could you hear me in the back when I was doing that poem? You're like, oh, you're loud. And with your brows furrowed, looks like you have one eyebrow again. This is called Home. I didn't grow up in a refugee camp. I grew up here, comfortable, able not to know or care, choose my own destination, close the book, turn off the TV, forget the stories. A gay man once asked me, why do you give a damn about Palestine? Why not, I replied. Why did men and women clench fists and fight back at the Stonewall, push through Matthew Shepard hate crime legislation in Congress? I care about Palestine. For the same reason I get emotional watching Schindler's List. Still can't comprehend why kids in my neighborhood picked on Michael Paul for being Jewish, was 10 years old the first time someone called me a sand nigger. And I don't hate the town I grew up in, but I don't forget those experiences either. The way white women on the block talk down on my brown mother. Don't forget the stories, pretend it didn't happen. Don't feel the need to dream up an alternative American childhood, as if its vision ever intended to include me. People fight back because they identify. My grandmother still fills tear ducts with longing memories of Jaffa, a home we in America take for granted. I don't ask anyone to forget about the Holocaust or feel as Jewish because I grew up on Long Island. Not going to have someone tell me where my loyalties lie because my physical environment should define who I am. Remembrance is part of action. Never again applies to many peoples. I'm a product of America, but no less Palestinian. Palestine, being that fight for freedom and justice, not just low valleys, beautiful sunsets, and fig trees, not just my grandparents' house in Jaffa that's still standing, not just a place I nervously visited, could barely catch a cab in Arabic, yet welcomed, like they were expecting my return. Home, in the realest sense. I'm Palestinian. I was born in America. That is who I am.